The internet is an incredible place, ultimately bringing the world together and connecting us like never before. However, as useful as the internet is, it also houses some terrifying things. And we're not simply talking the dark web, we're talking about horrifying stories that will linger in your minds for the rest of your lives. Creepypastas that people swear are based on truth, and legends that people are sure hail from their hometowns. So today on Top 5 Scary Videos, I'm going to be counting down our list of the top 5 scariest monsters on the internet, part 2. Before we begin though, be sure to stick around until the end of the video where I'll be responding to some of your comments. And with that, let's jump in. Coming in at number 5, we have Mr. Widemouth. Mr. Widemouth is the titular main antagonist of the well-known creepypasta of the same name, Mr. Widemouth. He is a mischievous creature whose nature is to manipulate children into injuring themselves, resulting in countless deaths of young children. Now in the creepypasta Mr. Widemouth, the narrator was diagnosed with mononucleosis, or the kissing disease, when they were 5 years old, meaning that they would have been bedridden and housebound. The narrator met a small petite creature with a large mouth shortly after being diagnosed. They asked if the creature had a name. The creature replied with Mr. Widemouth. The creature would often hide under the narrator's bed, saying he didn't want the parents to see him because he was afraid they wouldn't allow him to play with the narrator. When the narrator finally had permission to go outside, Mr. Widemouth was waiting for them and showed them a trail, saying he had many friends go down the trail and that one day they would take the narrator down the trail when they were ready. Soon the narrator gathered up their things and waited for Mr. Widemouth to signal them to go. Mr. Widemouth waved at the narrator as the truck began to drive away, holding a steak knife in his hand. The narrator, of course, didn't wave back. They tried to return back to where the old house was one day, however, the house was nowhere to be seen as it had burned down years after the narrator had left, so they decided to walk down the trail that Mr. Widemouth told them about. But what he discovered was a gravesite and tombstones belonging to young children. Now, Mr. Widemouth is an extremely manipulative creature, pressuring young children into harmful tricks and actions, ultimately deceiving many children into taking their own lives. So if you hear something creepy under your bed, maybe just ignore it, because you don't want to meet Mr. Widemouth. Coming in at number 4, we have the Expressionless. In order to do this internet monster any justice, I must quote its terrifying story. In June 1972, a woman appeared in Cedars-Sinai Hospital in Los Angeles, California, in nothing but a white, blood-covered gown. Now this, in itself, should not be too surprising, as people often have accidents nearby and come to the nearest hospital for medical attention. But there were two things that caused people who saw her to vomit and flee in terror. The first being that she wasn't exactly human. She resembled something close to a mannequin, but had the dexterity and fluidity of a normal human being. Her face was as flawless as a mannequin's, devoid of eyebrows and smeared in makeup. There was a kitten clamped in her jaws, so unnaturally tight that no teeth could be seen, and the blood was still squirting out over her gown and onto the floor. She then pulled it out of her mouth, tossed it aside, and collapsed. From the moment she stepped through the entrance to when she was taken to the hospital room and cleaned up before being prepped for sedation, she was completely calm, expressionless, and motionless. The doctors thought it best to restrain her until the authorities could arrive, and she did not protest. They were unable to get any kind of response from her, and most staff members felt too uncomfortable to look directly at her for more than a few seconds. But the second the staff tried to sedate her, she fought back with extreme force. Two members of staff had to hold her down as her body rose up on the bed with that same blank expression. She turned her emotionless eyes towards the male doctor and did something unusual. She smiled. As she did, the female doctor screamed and let go out of shock. In the woman's mouth were not human teeth, but long, sharp spikes, too long for her mouth to close fully without causing any damage. The male doctor stared back at her for a moment before asking, "What in the hell are you?" She cracked her neck down to her shoulder to observe him, still smiling. There was a long pause. She then darted forward, sinking her teeth into his throat, ripping out his jugular. She stood up and leaned over him, whispering, "I am God." Yikes. Coming in at number 3, we have Eyeless Jack. Let's start off with this eerie quote. "I was staring face to face with a creature with a black hoodie and a dark blue mask with no nose or mouth staring down at me. The thing that scared me the most was that it had no eyes, just empty black sockets. The creature also had some black substance dripping from its sockets. Now, Eyeless Jack is the titular main antagonist of the creepypasta story of the same name. Jack is a man-eating, enigmatic serial killer with a craving for human organs. The original story goes as follows. A man named Mitch moves in with his brother Edwin after his house is foreclosed. A week later, Mitch wakes up with a large gash on his cheek. After going to the hospital, the doctor reveals that Mitch's left kidney had been surgically removed overnight. Around midnight that night, Mitch woke up to see Eyeless Jack over his bed wearing a blue mask with black liquid dripping from the empty sockets behind the mask. Mitch managed to grab his camera and take a picture before Jack attacked, clawing at his chest. Mitch did escape and fled into the woods, where he tripped and knocked himself unconscious. When he awoke in the hospital, it was revealed to him that Edwin had been killed the previous night. His parents drove him to the house to collect his belongings, but when he entered, Mitch saw Edwin's corpse and a small object lying next to him. He observed it to find that it was his kidney with a bite taken out of it, covered in a black substance. Creepy, very creepy indeed. Now, Eyeless Jack typically appears as a masculine humanoid figure dressed in an all-black hoodie and dark jeans. He dons a deep blue mask with large black empty sockets with a strange liquid substance trickling down from the mask. Now, thankfully he isn't all that powerful, however he is incredibly stealthy and seems to possess some degree of anatomical knowledge and has a thorough understanding of the human body, use of surgical instruments, and removing vital organs of the human body, in turn showing that he is intelligent. Next up at number 2, we have the Slenderman. Of course, a lot of you were angry that I didn't include him in part 1, but he's here now. Slenderman is arguably the most famous internet legend on our list, which is why I saved him for part 2. He's just too damn obvious. However, that doesn't make him any less terrifying. The Slenderman is an alleged paranormal figure purported to have been in existence for centuries, covering a large geographic area. He is a being, male in appearance, who looks like a man with extremely long, slender arms and legs. He also appears to have 4 to 8 long black tentacles that protrude from his back, though different photographs and enthusiasts disagree on this fact. He is always seen wearing black suits, strikingly similar to the visage of the notorious Men in Black, and as the name suggests, appears very thin and able to stretch his limbs and torso to inhuman lengths in order to induce fear and ensnare his prey. Once his arms are outstretched, his victims are put into something of a hypnotized state, where they are utterly helpless to stop themselves from walking into them. Not just that, but he's also able to create tendrils from his fingers and back that he uses to walk on in a similar fashion to Dr. Octopus. Now, whether he absorbs, kills, or merely takes his victims to an undisclosed location or dimension is also unknown, as there are never any bodies or evidence left behind in his wake. Slenderman's face is pale and ghostly, appearing to have been wrapped in a type of gauze or cloth. Now, even though Slender was fabricated on something awful forums, some people across the globe have reported sightings. He is said to be seen at night, peering into windows, and walks out in front of lone motorists on secluded roads. So be very, very careful. Thank God we're in quarantine, right? And finally, coming in number 1, we have Kuchisakeonna, also known as the slit-mouthed woman. The slit-mouthed woman is a prominent Japanese urban legend. According to the legend, rumors began spreading back in 1979 of alleged sightings of the slit-mouthed woman around the Nagasaki prefecture, causing panic in many Japanese towns. Schools were closed, children sent home, and police officers patrolled the streets. Now, the slit-mouthed woman later returned as a vengeful spirit wearing a surgical mask. She is said to approach children and ask them, "Am I pretty?" If the child answers yes, she will take off a surgical mask, revealing her Glasgow smile, and ask, "How about now?" If the child changes their answer to no, she cuts them in half. If the child sticks to the answer of yes, she will slit their mouths just like hers. Running away from her will not help, and she will simply reappear in front of the victim. At this point, injury is inevitable. The only sure way of escaping the slit-mouthed woman alive and unharmed is to give her an ambiguous answer such as, "You are average," or "so-so," which in turn will confuse her. Also, it's said that if you drop candy or fruit, she will begin to look at it, giving her victim enough time to escape. Now, the origin of the slit-mouthed woman goes as follows. It was said that she was the prettiest woman in the village. She would constantly ask children, "Am I pretty?" Of course, the children would say yes. However, one day Kuchisakeonna thought she could get away with cheating, but she was caught. As revenge, her husband slit her mouth, and not long after she died from her injuries. Well, there we have it. Do you guys agree with our list? Were there any scary internet monsters that we missed? Leave us all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below, and perhaps we can do a part 3. Before I go though, I just want to respond to a few comments from part 1 of our list. SCC said, why isn't Slendy on this list? If a slasher like Jeff the Killer got in, why hasn't Slendy? Look, I saved Slenderman for part 2. I don't want to go with all the obvious answers for part 1, do I? Mimi Katzen said, I'm a simple minion. I see scary monsters, I click. I love how the internet has made these creatures more widespread like a collective story. I happily devour creepypasta whenever I can. What's your favourite creature, Lucy? Personally, I like the Smiling Man. The Smiling Man is absolutely terrifying to me. I don't like things that move slowly and then move really quickly, you know? I don't like things that move slow or quickly in general. I don't like things that move at all. So there we have it. Bryce Frost said, Siren Head is definitely gaining traction. Congrats on the artist who created him. Ain't that the truth? I didn't know anything about Siren Head and now I can't stop seeing him everywhere. They even made games about him. I kinda wanna play him. Jason King said Jeff's smile is eerily similar to your smile in the rainbow picture. Who says I'm not Jeff the Killer? Can you confirm? Bet you can't. Hurricane Kate said I never heard of any of these. Smiling Man is terrifying. Like I said, Smiling Man is the scariest. And you should all definitely check out the short film on YouTube if you haven't seen it yet. And on that note, if you haven't already, be sure to give this video a big thumbs up, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another scary vid. And until next time, see you later.